Hi everyone. So today we're going to talk about compressing PDF document. Now, situation we're talking about, say you have a large document that you need to send out to somebody through email or maybe WhatsApp or maybe publish it online on your website, and it's taking a long time to download. That's because your document is too heavy. So why should you even worry or care about compressing those documents? Number one, it's because the recipient of the document, whosoever is going to be at the receiving end, they would not have a great experience waiting for a long time, depending on maybe they have a weaker internet, and it might not be a great experience for your customers or your end recipient to wait for so long for this to be downloaded. And the second main reason is there could be even bottleneck where you can't even use that service to transmit the data or transfer the data or the file to the other party. For example, there are email services which will only let you upload a file up to 25 megabytes, I think. And I believe Gmail is one of those, and Outlook is that too. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat section, but there are definitely restrictions on how much you can attach when you're sending a document through emails. That's another reason why you should worry or care about compressing the documents. So, how do you go about compressing any document using Adobe Acrobat Pro DC? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So, let's jump right in. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at a document which was created out of images, out of scanned documents. And the nature of images is that they're heavy and they're bulky in the sense that they're big file sizes. And when you, generally speaking, depending on how you create them, if you create PDF out of image documents, um, your file size is going to be heavy. So that's exactly what we're going to discuss today, right? So for example, if I go into one of the folders, I want to show you that these are all different images from for a presentation that were actually scanned and cropped, and now they ended up as images. And you can see the image size as for one of the files is 1.9 megabytes, 1.2, 1.5. And then when you combine all of this and when you try to make a presentation out of this, and especially when you have high resolution images, the file size can be really heavy. So for example, you can see here it could be up to 25 megabytes depending on how you created the PDF document, right? So the 25.2 megabytes only for a file with the 5 pages, it's huge. And partially it's happening because, as you can see, there are a lot of images in this document, and they are also high resolution images, and that's why it's happening. But the question is, how do you go about fixing that? How do you go about compressing the document, but at the same time making sure that you are not losing a lot of the quality in your document? So you want your text to be still sharp. You want your images to look really great and high resolution, at least on the screen. And that's what we want to achieve today, right? So what do? First, of course, you have your document ready as a PDF. If you don't have that, if you want to know how do you create PDFs out of images, I have already done a video on that. The link will be somewhere on the top. Click on the I button and you should be able to see the video. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and hit subscribe, because I have created a series of videos on Adobe Acrobat and other Adobe products to help you become more productive and save time. So do go out and check the channel, check the series, and check the create video if create PDF video if you don't know how to do that. But that's just step number one, creating the PDF document. The step number two, once you have the document ready, open in the Adobe Acrobat Pro DC desktop application, you would want to go to all tools. All tools is a section where you will, of course, access all the tools Adobe Acrobat has to offer. So click on that all tools section. And then you would want to click on view more. If you don't see compress tool here on the top section, you would want to click on View More link at the bottom of the screen, which is here. And then it will expand the tool base for you. It will expand the tools. And then you should be able to see compress a PDF. If you don't find it here, or if it's a trouble, just always you can always go back to find tool, find text or tool, which is on the top right, and click here and then type in the keyword compress, and it should be able to take you to the same tool, right? So it doesn't matter if you click on this or if you click on the actual tool, you're gonna go on the same page, right? So let's click on compress a PDF, and then there are a couple of options that you see on the left hand side. I'm gonna close the search to avoid the distraction there. So there are a couple of things that you see here on the left hand side. First thing you see, it says, do you want to reduce file size? Of course, that's what we want to do. Then it says, do you have a single document or do you have multiple documents? Now, the multiple documents is what you're going to use if you are doing the same process of compressing documents for multiple files. So say there are 10, 15, 20 documents in a folder that needs to be compressed, go ahead and use that option. For us, it's only single file, so we'll stick to the single file option there. Now, there are two ways of dealing with the situation. One is you can stick with the basics, which is click on single file. It's going to say, hey, where do you want me to save this file? And I select the folder, which is my compressed PDF folder. And then I'm going to call it presentation compressed, and then hit save. And then I'm going to show you the quality of the document, like, with the original versus compressed one. And then I'm going to show you the file size difference. So this is the most basic way of how you compress a document without getting into the details and technicalities of how things work. So let's just go back into Finder, look at our compressed document, which is this one. And I'm going to open up the original one as well so that we can do a head-to-head comparison. So this is the original document. You can see the text is sharp, the images are sharp, and I'm going to jump over to the other document, which is my compressed document, which is this one. And here as well, you can see the text is still sharp. The images are great. It's not like they're blurry or something. So I think it does a great job. But when you look, what's really amazing is when you look at the file size difference, you see you jumped from 25 megabytes of the original document to 1.6 megabytes. That's absolutely insane. And while still kind of maintaining kind of a similar quality, at least from your eyes, you can't really tell the difference. And it is great, right? So that's what the compressed document or compressed PDF really does. But now what we want to do is we're going to take it to the next level, because there are situations where you want to control how that compressed PDF really behave, and you want to customize the behavior of Adobe Acrobat when you try to compress a document. And what I mean by that, let me show you in a moment. So let's go back to our original document, which is this one. And I'm going to go to all tools again. And I'm going to go into compress document, compress a PDF one more time. But this time, rather than clicking on single file, what I want to do here is I want to click on the advanced optimization option. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to show you behind the scenes and how you can customize those things depending on what you want to achieve out of this. In case the default settings and the default behavior of single file that you just saw does not meet your needs, right? So how can you customize that behavior? You will simply click on advanced optimization here, and then you have a lot of presets to choose from. Standard is what basically it did when you click on single file, so that's the standard settings. Mobile settings is for you to be able to compress it so much that it looks great on phone, but maybe not so much on the desktop or bigger screens. But if that's the target device that your consumers or the recipient of the document is going to use to view the document, and it needs to be really light, maybe that's the option you want to choose. And then the next option is custom, which is where you can create your own mix of how that PDF compressor or PDF optimizer is going to behave. I will show you a couple of these options and then I'll let you discover more, right? So before I go into this, I want to show you one more thing here. So there's this button which says audit space usage, and it's basically a great way to understand what really is consuming and making up for the majority of the space of that file, and how you can kind of like understanding the problem is the first step so that you can solve it, right? So click on audit space usage, and it's gonna give you a result with all the different categories of the components or elements in the document. For example, images, content streams, fonts, structure info, color spaces. So basically, these are things which basically make your document heavy. But then look on the right hand side and kind of the percentages and the bytes. It shows you that in this example, it shows you that images are taking 99.61% of the space. So you know the problem is images that you need to fix. And the images are really heavy and high resolution, which is why it's happening. And then you see the total file size is 25 megabytes. So it's showing up in bytes. So 25 megabytes is this, or like whatever you see on the screen in terms of the bytes. And out of those 25.195 megabytes, images is 25.097, which is 99.61%. So this basically is a great way for you to understand the problem that you're trying to solve so that you can be really focused on that. And once you understand that, you will go back to this screen and then you have those different categories for you to work with. For example, the first one is images, and then you can really be picky and kind of like get into the weeds of how you want the compress tool to behave. So for example, it says, hey, if I find color images, I want you to, if you find color in images, I want you to downsample, downgrade the quality. I'm gonna go back to standard. So and then to custom. So what we want to do here is it's basically saying, hey, if you find images and if the images are color images, I want you to downsample it using this mechanism. So there are different techniques, technical terms, but these are different techniques that Acrobat uses behind the scene to downsample and compress the file. And the first line item basically says, if you find any images over 225 ppi resolution, that's pixel per inches, I want you to compress and reduce the resolution of that image to 150, right? Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is, you might be thinking, why are you telling me all this? I don't need to know this. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is because there could be scenarios where you maybe say, you're okay to compress the grayscale images more than the color images, right? So maybe they're like different type of images, and you know that the grayscale are something that you don't really care about so much. So maybe you want to go back there and say, if you find the grayscale images, compress them like really heavily, maybe reduce the PPI from 225 to 90, and you're fine with that. And then there are different compression levels. These compression level basically mean it again. These are technologies behind the scene that's being used to compress the file. JPEG is the most commonly used. It helps you compress the file heavily, compress the images heavily. There is some loss of the data, but it's not something that you can. It's not something that's visible unless you go for a really low minimum quality compression. It's not gonna do a lot of damage, right? And then there are other compression type like zip, which is used for say there are a lot of artwork or text work in the image, and you want to use zip in that case. Zip 2000 is a bit of a newer technology than sorry, not zip. JPEG 2000 is a bit of a newer technology than JPEG, but it's not that popular, not that compatible. So still people are using JPEG to make sure that the compatibility is not an issue, right? Long story short, stick with JPEG and you should not face any issues, right? And then what you might want to play with and change is the quality. So again, like I said, maybe you're okay to go with a low quality for the grayscale images, but for the color one, you do not want to compromise so much, and maybe you want to change the number to 200, and the quality should be high for these images, right? So it gives you the power to kind of customize that behavior if that's your requirement, if that's your need, right? Um, I sometimes get a question about, hey, what's the difference between the grayscale images and the monochromatic or monochrome images? The difference is grayscale images are the images which are made of without going much into the detail and weeds of it. The grayscale images are the images which are made of a blend of grays, right? So it's not an absolute yes or no. It's not an absolute black or white. It's a range between black and white. If that's what it's using to create the image, that's your grayscale image. Monochrome images are the absolute number of black and white. So if the image is made of an absolute black or an absolute white, and there's nothing in between, that's your monochrome image, right? So just thought maybe you might want to know this, but it's fine. You can just use the screen to customize how your images are compressed. The second thing that you might want to look at is the font. Now, there are a lot of heavy fonts that you've used, and heavy fonts. What I mean by heavy fonts is maybe say a lot of different fonts. And PDF have the tendency to embed the fonts in the document so that the look and feel of the document remains the same. You must have noticed that if you have a Word document or a presentation document like a PPT, and if you send that document out to somebody else, and if they don't have the fonts, it would look a little bit weird on their screen if they don't have the fonts that you've used, and if the fonts that you use are like custom fonts and it's not a part of the standard fonts that ship with the computers, right? And if that's the fonts you're using, um, it's going to look a little bit weird on the other side of the recipient because they need to have those fonts to be able to see the document really well, right? To read the document with the same fonts. Versus in PDFs, what happens is PDFs, when you create a document out of maybe a Word document into PDF or a presentation into PDF have the tendency of embedding those fonts in itself so that it does not matter what device or what person is going to open that document, it is going to look exactly the same the way it was created, right? And the reason why I'm telling you this is because depending on how many different custom fonts you've used, chances are that there is a long list of fonts that PDF have to embed in itself to be able to show those text properly. Now, this option gives you the option to maybe unembed some of those fonts if you think they're not really important, to again shed some of the weight of the file. But whether or not you should do it, again, it comes down to auditing the space and finding where the issue is. And for example, here you can see fonts only make 0.29% of this file size. So I know for sure that fonts is not an issue. So I do not need to really worry about that, right? Similarly, transparency is basically if you have multiple layers and you have transparency in the document. And when I say transparency, what I mean is say there's one image on top of the other and you can see through. So like there for example in Photoshop, if you ever worked with Photoshop, you can work with different layers and you can have the concept of transparency. If that's what you're working with, it also increases the file size, and maybe for the purpose of the document to be distributed, maybe you don't really need it to be transparent. And if you're okay flattening that document, the transparent layers and merging them together, this is where you go and enable that option, right? Discarding objects, again, it's plain and simple. You can read the English. So things like, if there are form fields or if there are JavaScripts, if there are, I don't know, page thumbnails or document tags. So there are different things that could be attached, different objects that could be attached with the document. and you maybe there are a situation where you want to control the behavior and you want to discard some of those items, right? So maybe say this was an interactive form field. When I say interactive form field, what I mean is where you have a form and you can fill in the name and fill in the last name and then in your address, and you can interact with the PDF document. But say when you're distributing this document, it doesn't need to be interactive. The form fields are only for illustration in the document, and you're okay to get rid of those interaction, and you want to flatten those form fields. So this is just one example of why you might want to go in there and customize the settings rather than taking the root of the default that I showed you before, right? So that's your discard objects. Discard user data, it's the information about the document that you might have attached to it by mistake or unknowingly that you want to get rid of before you publicize that document. So things like, say, if you're working on that document with multiple parties in collaboration, and then you've been commenting back and forth on the document, and now you want to make sure that you're discarding all the comments that anybody has put into the document. So not only, of course, it's going to help you sanitize the document, but it is going to reduce the file size, although small enough. But those comments also take some space when you save the file with the comments, right? So what type of user data you want to get rid of, you can choose that here. And then the last one is clean up. It's basically clean or anything else in the category of cleanup which is not mentioned above is going to be found here. For example, discarding invalid bookmarks, invalid links. This is great. The last option, you would definitely want to have this checked on. Optimize a PDF for fast web view. What does that mean? It means that it makes your PDF document progressive. And this is another term, and you might be asking, what does progressive mean? This definition doesn't help, right? The progressive here means that when you say this is a long document, 5 pages, 10 pages, 20 pages, and even though you've compressed the document to make it lighter, but the other party who's going to receive and view the document online, they don't really have a great bandwidth. They don't really have a great Wi-Fi or phone internet. And now it's going to take them some time to download the whole document. But now, because you have enabled this option, optimize the PDF for web viewing, fast web viewing, what it's going to do is it's going to load the first page first, and then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth. And what it really does is when that person, the recipient, when he tries to view the document, he does not need to wait for the whole 10 pages or 20 pages or 50 pages to get downloaded before he can start reading it. The moment he clicks on it, even there's a slow internet that he is working with, the first page will load fast so that he can start working with the first page. Meanwhile, the other page will be downloaded in the background. That's what optimize the PDF for fast web view mean. And you would definitely want to have that on if that's the purpose of the document. Okay. And so say this is what you want to save, and maybe these are the settings that you want to work with every now and then, and you don't want to create those settings again and again. You have the option to save it as a preset. So you click on save, name it, say, I don't know, distribution settings or whatever you want to name them, and say okay. And now you will see one of the preset is going to be that custom preset that you just created. So you can switch back and forth between the standard one that's shipped with it versus the one that you just created for yourself, right? So that's there, and then you can hit OK. And then, of course, it's going to say, okay, I'm taking those custom settings that you asked me to take, and I'm going to use those to compress the document. Where do you want to save it? And I'm going to save it in the same folder. I'm going to call it custom compress. And I'm going to hit save, right? And then you see at the bottom, it says reducing the file size. And that's how you basically reduce the file size using either the default method of single file, which doesn't ask you any questions except where do you want to save the document, or if you're if you need to customize some of those settings, you can always go into advanced optimization and take it to the next level, right? So that's all we had to discuss for today. If you like this video, please click on the like button, hit subscribe if you want to see more such videos. As I said, I've created a whole series out of the Adobe Acrobat. In the next video, we're going to talk about exporting the PDF into the native file format. What I mean by that is, say you have got access to a PDF document that was a Word document before, or maybe an Excel document or a PowerPoint. And now, for some reason, you don't have access to that native file format, and you need to make a lot of changes, and you're not that much comfortable editing it in the PDF view, and you want to convert it back to its native file format. How do you go about doing that? That's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next video. So until then, I would encourage you to put your comments in, ask questions that you're looking for, and please suggest if I should be doing a video on a specific content related to Adobe Acrobat or anything else for that matter. And that's all for today. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye bye.